I want to talk about you as a person.
Yeah, I have clients who are lawyers making a killing.
Sounds like you're almost regretting it.
We need to move, and we need to move now.
So when you say estate planning,
intergenerational wealth,
let's talk about cryptocurrency.
Who's going to pay the tax?
And then they decided to cash out.
Nothing against lawyers.
And what exactly is the nature of the business?
Cushion the blow.
Is that one of your selling points?
Here's $10 million.
Be in front of it right away.
A universal basic income.
So you first quit and then you decided to think about how to make money? Fabio Campanella, how's it going?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And let me just actually close my window. I forget about that sometimes. Okay, so I'm doing well. I'm very excited to have you here on this podcast. You know, usually I do a lot of podcasts with sports personalities, but mainly on the business side. But I also want to diversify and kind of go into just the usual business owners.
Regular boring stuff.
Not regular boring stuff, but a different perspective, I would say.
Right.
And I asked a common friend of ours, if he can recommend someone, and he highly recommended you. So I just wanted to talk to you about what you do, and we can start from there and go from there.
Sure. I mean, what I'm currently doing, I'm running two businesses. I run a wealth advisory business out of Toronto, and I'm also co-running, as a co-partner of a full-service accounting firm, public accounting firm in Burlington, Oakville area.
How did you get into accounting?
All right. Well, bit of a long story. So my father's a CPA. My mother's a lawyer. After high school, I messed around for a couple of years.
What does that mean?
I just partied, worked as a waiter, worked as a bartender, had a lot of fun. Let's just say that. I had a lot of fun.
Nice.
Much to the dismay of my parents. When I was 21, I went back. I said, okay, it's the fun is fun, but I got to start doing something with my life. So I went to school. I went to university as a mature student, and I took a philosophy degree, right? And I said, okay, well, what the heck am I going to do with a philosophy degree when that was over? So I started looking at my options.
So you graduated with a philosophy degree?
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
And that's when I was looking at law school. So I started studying for the LSAT, so on and so forth. And that's when my mother and a couple of family friends pulled me aside who were lawyers. And they said, listen, you don't want to become a lawyer.
Why not?
Well, they told me, they said, you're going to love law school, but you're going to hate the practice of law. Right? So I said, okay, well, these people are older, wiser, and it's multiple people independently telling me this.
So I kind of, hold on. So it's interesting. I mean, usually a lawyer or a doctor, engineer, that's the great profession to be in. I wonder what were their arguments against it?
Well, there was this. There was, my father had been an accountant for a long time, since I was a kid. My mother became a lawyer at 40. When I was about 15, 16 years old, okay? There was a business there, my father's business. It was small, but it was established, and it was something that I could take over, right? And when they were showing me, people are usually thinking about doctor, lawyer, in Canada, that's the sort of the big professions. When they were showing me how the money is actually made and how many hours are actually worked, the cost benefit didn't make any sense to me at the time. Now, when I'm looking at, I have clients who are lawyers making a killing, right? But now that I've been in accounting, I'm 42 now, I've been in accounting for a number of years, and
I wish to look like you when I'm 42, to be honest. That's crazy.
Yeah, I got a filter on. But and the flexibility of the profession is, in my opinion, really good. The lifestyle that you can live, when you're going to be busy, when you're not going to be busy, so you can plan your year in that particular perspective.
You mean accounting?
Accounting, yeah. I like it. And the whole thing is that I'm the type of guy, I can't do one thing. I need to do multiple things. So it also allowed me to get into finance, right? Like retail, investment management, estate planning, those types of things, right? So financial planning. So I'm able to run both businesses. It's stimulating. I'm making a living. I can work primarily from home if I want to. I can meet clients at their place of business or their homes. I can go to the office. There's a lot of flexibility. So I'm glad. I'm happy with the choice. But really, the choice was heavily influenced by family, friends, and my mother telling me, "Don't become a lawyer."
Mm-hmm.
Nothing against lawyers, right? But that's just how the cookie crumbled at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you say estate planning, because I kind of looked into it as well before our podcast, but is that, because I thought maybe it's a real estate, but it's mostly like everything that you have, kind of asset planning, like retirement stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is it?
Sure. Estate planning is a concept. We'll limit the discussion to Canada and a little bit in the U.S. Right.
Absolutely.
So there are estate taxes, direct estate taxes, let's say in the United States. In Canada, estate taxes, there are some direct estate taxes, such as probate, but that's not super significant. But there are indirectly, your estate is indirectly taxed when you pass away. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you die in Canada, imagine you have no spouse, and we'll just use a simple example, right? Like a single individual who has a house, a stock portfolio, and maybe a rental property. When they die, depending on how they've left their estate, there's generally a deemed disposition of all their assets at fair market value. Okay.
So and they don't have any children.
They have no children, or let's say they do have children, they want to leave the assets to their children.
Okay.
Well, you cannot have intergenerational wealth transfer from parents to children over many generations without ever triggering tax. Because then what will happen is you'll have every generation will have this ridiculous unfair advantage in the marketplace, right? So the simplified mechanism here in Canada is that there's a deemed disposition of your assets. So you have a bunch of bank stocks that you bought for $50 that are now worth $1 million, right? When
unrealized.
you die, unrealized, correct. When you die, it's as though you've sold those stocks and you have a big capital gain and you got to pay tax on it. Okay. Estate planning, at least my component of estate planning, is primarily focused on the taxation of the estate and planning how we distribute these assets, either inter vivos, like in the person's lifetime, or how we cushion the blow at the time of deemed disposition, right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say you buy a bunch of properties and 40, 50 years goes by, right? And you bought these properties. Yeah, they've appreciated significantly. And you want to leave these properties to your children. You don't want to leave cash, right? Who's going to pay the tax? Where are you going to get the money from to pay the tax, right? Or let's say you want to pass the property onto your children now while they're in their 40s, right? And you're in your 70s, but you still want to retain all the value to yourself to live in retirement. How do you do that? What's the mechanism to do that, right? Estate planning will involve lawyers, accountants, life insurance agents, and financial planners to work together to come up with a plan on how to transition these assets to the next generation. And that's what estate planning is. It's actually a pretty complicated, but
well worth it. I mean, if I'm an individual that is approaching retirement age and starting to think about, legacy and passing on the generational wealth and all, I mean, that's something to consider. Yeah. And I don't know how I feel about it, because I don't know. It's been 6 months since I've been to Canada, so I'm not used to like heavy taxation yet. But wait till the I guess
till you file a return.
Exactly, till it's kicked in. But you know what's so let's get your first. Let's talk about your first example with, let's say you have a portfolio that appreciated $1 million, right? And then when you die, whoever is accepting that $1 million, your children or whatever, they need to pay tax on that. On that unrealized gain, you need to pay tax. Let's say, and I'm just curious. Let's say they did it and then they decided to cash out. Are they also paying tax on realized gain?
No, because conceptually what happens is the estate will pay the tax, not the children. Okay. So the estate will pay the tax in a very simple situation, right?
Okay, so originally, if like from the very like first $1 million, like it's not like your children paying tax. You still need to pay that tax. Okay.
Yeah, the estate must pay the tax.
It's its own kind of thing.
Exactly, and then the estate is essentially a trust, right? The estate trustee or the executor is another in other terminology, right? Will file the tax return, the terminal tax return, pay the tax, obtain a clearance certificate from the Canada Revenue Agency saying, okay, you're free and clear, and distribute the assets. Now, those assets will then go to the children after tax and will form their new adjusted cost base. So if they were to sell them immediately, there would be no tax in their hands because the tax has already been paid. So the taxation system in Canada is designed for the most part to avoid double taxation.
Okay.
It's not,
because that was my concern.
Yeah, it's not the policy of Parliament or the government of Canada to double dip. Now, sometimes there may be some double dipping, but because the mechanism is difficult to work out mathematically, right? But the overall policy is to not have double taxation.
Understood. Okay. So I want to go back to your basically your resume. I don't want to go too deep into details, but I want to talk about you as a person. So at what point? Because I looked through your LinkedIn profile just to kind of track your profession, and I saw that you were moving pretty fast, and you were moving through different companies, including PwC, which is one of the big four accounting firms. But then you sort of ventured out on your own. At what point did you decide that you have that confidence to basically have your own business, and what exactly contributed to that, and did you have any partners for that?
Yeah. So what gave me the confidence? Probably stupidity.
So it was a risk.
Not knowing what was involved, and probably just being green and naive.
It sounds like you're almost regretting it.
No. It was the best decision I ever made.
Okay.
To be honest with you, but not having the fear because not knowing what it actually involved. I quit. I quit work at Harmonic, which is a hedge fund administration company. I quit. I had a good job. I had a good salary. Right. It was secure. And I quit. I had a mortgage. I had bills to pay, and I had no way to make any money. I had to figure it out for myself, and not knowing how difficult it was.
So you first quit, and then you decided to think about how to make money?
Yeah. I said, if I can't do this on the side and ramp it up, I need to quit and be thrown to the lions and figure it out. Okay. Which was probably a crazy idea, right? But I ended up being okay, but it was stressful. So to tell you the truth, probably it was being naive is what gave me the confidence. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I said, look, I believe in myself and I'm going to do it. Right.
Sounds like you're downplaying your entrepreneurial spirit that is very, admired in a lot of people, and you don't actually come across very often.
Well, yeah. The other thing is I grew up with my father has, he immigrated to Canada when he was maybe 20, 21 years old.
Oh, where
from Italy,
okay.
from southern Italy. And he had just finished an engineering degree, came to Canada, got a job, hated working for people, and was an entrepreneur from then on. So maybe it's in my genes, right? So that's the other thing. I said, well, if my father could do it, he couldn't speak a lick of English, then, I'm born here, I have an education here, I should be able to do it as well. That probably gave me confidence as well.
Right. We tend to look up to our fathers as an example. of what we want to do, and that gives us confidence as well. But that's awesome. So tell me more about this. When you started, what's your business right now? What's the name of the company, and where are you located? Sure. And what exactly is the nature of the business? You said estate planning, but maybe there's something else to it.
Yeah. So there's two businesses. There's Campanella McDonald LLP, which is a full service public accounting firm.
Okay.
That offers, audit, review, compilation of financial statements for entrepreneurs, private companies, and Canadian and U.S. tax compliance and planning. Then there's basically me. I have a trade name, Praetorian Wealth Advisory, but it's essentially myself and a very small team, and that's essentially retail investment advisory and estate planning. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. And it would be like non-discretionary investment advisory.
And you guys located in Toronto?
That's Toronto, yeah.
Awesome. So I just want to basically fast forward to today, and I want to ask you, and primarily I wanted to talk about business in Toronto. We are currently in the midst of pandemic, in the midst of coronavirus, and I want to know, how do you handle this as a business, business owner, as a boss? Do you guys have a brick and mortar office where you go every day and there's like, several people? How many people do you have employed? Tell me that.
Right. So it's a team of 10 about, okay. Because there are some part-timers, there are some subcontractors.
Okay.
Right? We have brick and mortar, but we're actually in between brick and mortar.
What does that mean?
We are attempting to construct a new office amid this pandemic. So it's not, we can't access it at the moment because the construction is halfway done and nobody can go into work, right?
Right.
So right now, everyone's working remotely. So that is a challenge. Running a small business, an accounting firm, investment advisory, that sort of thing, it can be done from home. So if we rewind back to when this all started, when I started getting, over the news, the government of Ontario was starting to talk about closing down the schools. That's when I said to myself, okay, we need to move, and we need to move now. We need to figure this out right now.
So we foresaw that before they even did the lockdown. Yeah.
So I said, there's been talk about this. I said, if they're going to close schools, that means this is serious. Right. So I got out of the denial. I was one of those people, I'm like, come on, you remember the SARS thing back in the day, right? Right. I'm like, what is this nonsense? X amount of people died from the flu. This thing is killing like 5 people in China. Like this is just news. They're just, but when they started talking about closing down schools, I said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be, as a business owner, I'm not going to be responsible for forcing people to come to this office and then they get sick. No way. I got everybody to take their computers home. I called in my IT contractor and I said, figure out how to make everybody work from home, log into the server, work remotely and securely so that my client data isn't isn't good. You know what I mean? Going to get So I put some money into that. It was a big hiccup because this is tax season. This is our busiest season, right? Yes. But we figured it out, like many businesses figured it out, and you just adapt, right? So this is an unprecedented time. Like this, we've never seen this in our lifetime.
So I'd like to hear more about that adaptation. You said you've asked your IT contractor to sort of figure it out. How difficult was that for you or for your team to transition? Did you have to implement some sort of a new software, cloud software that you can use, not just from your work desktop, but also from your home desktop, like anything like that?
Yeah, so we had to set up, number one, I don't want anybody working on their computer directly at their house, right? I want them logging into our server or into a remote terminal that I can see.
Okay, to a portal.
Exactly.
Okay.
I don't know all the technicalities, right? But so for example, it's like, okay, well, where are we going to move the server? So we had to find somebody's home that has the best bandwidth, the fastest internet. So we moved it over there. We moved a couple terminals over there. So we had to figure out a way to make it work such that people can log in, access the server, because we don't use a cloud server at the moment.
So that's funny, because I was about to ask, right? You're using an actual physical server that you're maintaining yourself.
Exactly. We're using a physical server that we're maintaining ourselves. And the plan was to migrate everything to the cloud once we go to the new office.
Got it. Okay.
But we're not at the new office yet. So it's like, we have to move. We have to figure it out. Then it's, okay, well, how do we have meetings? And do we actually need to have these meetings?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Right. Do we need to physically meet with people? Do we need to have these Monday team meetings? Or does everybody know what they're doing, and can they work independently? And what you start seeing in these situations, I think that many businesses are going to be destroyed by this, I think. But we'll put those aside. We could discuss those later.
Okay.
But I think many businesses, especially information businesses or professional services, I think that many are going to adapt and become stronger.
In what way?
I think that right away, we started looking at inefficiencies, and we're like, okay, what are we doing and what do we need to do? Let's separate that from what do we need to do and what have we just been doing? Do we need this hour-long team meeting, or is that a waste of an hour, right? Do we need all this software, all these software subscriptions that we have? Or are we just seeing it as, this is $50 a month, this is $100, who cares, right? Where can we cut costs? Because we don't know if our clients are going to go bankrupt and not pay us, right? So we implemented a new engagement software where you electronically sign your engagement letter to engage us to prepare your tax returns or your financial statements, so on and so forth. And you have to put your credit card information in at the beginning and accept the fee at the beginning. And then upon acceptance of the final package, I press a button and I get paid, right? Rather than the traditional, okay, here's your invoice and send us a check. So we've implemented certain new measures that, we would never have looked into these things had it not been for COVID. Okay. But they're building efficiencies into our business, and they're actually helping us out. They're helping us reduce costs, helping us collect money from clients quicker, so on and so forth. Then we also started looking at the client list, and we said, okay, well, wait a second. If we're going to be a little bit less efficient working from home, we got to start looking at the clients and saying, well, which clients are actually profitable and which ones aren't, right? And maybe we approach the clients that aren't profitable and say, hey, listen, maybe we're not the right firm for you, but here's a colleague that might service you better.
So right? is that because you want to mitigate your risk, and knowing that the company is not profitable, you're sort of anticipating that you will probably not going to get paid for your services, and that's why you just want to be in front of it right away?
Not necessarily, because our mindset has changed. We're saying, hey, look, we're in a growth phase. The firm's been growing at not exponentially, but it's been growing as fast as a small firm can grow. But when you're growing, you're not paying attention to necessarily quality. So now we're sitting back and we're saying, well, do we actually need to grow, right? Do we actually need to grow, or can we just, at the end of the day, what matters is the bottom line, right? So, can we boost up the bottom line without having to increase the amount of work we're doing by by matching our personalities and our skill set with the right types of clients? And believe it or not, we're getting clients amid this COVID thing, right? Do
you think that's despite COVID or because of COVID, or all of a sudden you have the influx of
probably both. It's hard for me. I don't have the data. I don't have the actual data, but I think it's both. I mean, we recently got a very good client, a really, really good client. And they're like, hey, listen, my accountant is just not good with technology, and I'm not comfortable going into their office to meet them. And we'd rather do everything virtually. So they came in, we took a look at their systems, and we made some proposals, and they're like, this is perfect. And we landed a very good client, right?
Is that one of your selling points, that your company is good with technology and they offer services that can be done remotely?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our clients, we were one of the first, I think, small accounting firms to implement we've been using electronic signatures like DocuSign for 10 years.
Right, it's been around for a while.
Right,
but
exactly.
Yeah, not everyone is using it, which is surprising.
Not everyone was using it. So, I mean, there are certain things that must be pen to paper for CRA purposes, but whatever we could get done electronically, we've got done electronically. Also, we've been using remote workers for a long time.
Okay.
A long time, like since the business is 10 years old, and using remote workers and remote subcontractors who log in and do the work remotely for a very long time.
Right. That's convenient, because my question also was whether the virus impacted your company as a whole in terms of retaining the staff. You mentioned you have contractors and all, but overall, are you keeping everyone on staff? You mean the contractors and part-timers, are they still there, or you had to cut down on that as well?
We had to cut down a couple people. We did, because we've just been, like I said, it was a perfect storm. We're in between constructing. So we're incurring all these costs constructing this place, but construction is halted. But we still have to pay occupancy fees, which are extravagant. And there's just a couple of employees that were primed for a growth operation, and we decided, okay, we're going to tame down growth and we're going to look at quality more so. So we just couldn't afford them. We just couldn't afford them. So unfortunately, there were a couple of employees that we had to let go, but for the most part, the team is intact and the team is working.
Talk to me about the nature of your clients. You've mentioned they're small private businesses, and some of them are looking for tech updates in terms of their finances.
Yeah. I
know that Toronto is currently becoming a hub for startups and for smaller, private businesses that are also service-based. When I came down to this country, I started looking for a job, and I had several interviews, and I was able to actually look at their business models once I was researching that. And a lot of them are very service-based. It's not very rare you'll see something like a retail or anything like that. But a lot of them are service-based, and a lot of them are actually servicing, clients in the United States. But more and more businesses are coming here from the Silicon Valley, from California, from any sort of startup hubs in the US to Toronto, because I think it's because it's simply cheaper. In my opinion. And so how does that impact you? Do you have any clientele in that regards? And if you can give some examples.
Yeah, we do. So we have several software developers, with really good ideas, some AI companies. And what happens with these companies, it's cheaper to operate here than it is to operate in, let's say, San Francisco or something like that. So you don't need to be there. B, you have access to a well-educated workforce, right? And C, there's also government incentives for this stuff. If you're developing original software, especially the SHRED program, the Scientific Research Experimental Development Program of the Government of Canada, is very lucrative.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So that program, in essence, if you're doing research and development, scientific research and development, and software engineering, software development is considered part of that program, you could be getting up to 60% of your expenditures back in refundable tax credits from the government, essentially a check from the government for doing that type of research. Right? So you couple that with a well-educated workforce, and with we're in the New York time zone, right? The Eastern time zone,
right?
And you're in a good country that people follow the laws for the most part. There's a low amount of corruption.
Western country with the same sort of values and laws and you know.
Exactly. So, you know, we're not going to necessarily go and get the biggest, you know, tech companies in the world starting off here. But if you're a small tech company, like it's a good place to do business, I think. I think it's, and a lot of people are starting to see that, right? The infrastructure's here, like, you know, you're not worried about the government shutting you down or you know, bullying you. I think it's a good place it's a good platform, Toronto. From our particular perspective, one of our issues is we get these companies and we help them out in the first couple of years, and then I hand them off to one of my buddies at KPMG or PwC. Or
Got it.
Like that, right? Because then when you're starting to get you know, rounds of financing that are like $2 million, $3 million, $4 million dollars. Who the heck is Campanella McDonald on the financial statements? You need to show, you know, KPMG.
You gotta flex.
Exactly. You gotta flex, right? It's because the investors are going to be like, okay, it's not that we think that these guys are inadequate, but we can't trust them. They're not big enough to,
it makes
trust,
sense.
right? And that's why, you know, but I'm fine. I'm happy to hand them off. I'm happy when I lose a client like that.
Yeah,
like,
it gives
congrats,
you a good reputation at the end of the day. Because
but I'm happy for them. I'm happy for them. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it means that the company is successful and they're ready to scale.
Exactly.
Do you see that process slowing down amid the crisis? I mean, I'm just wondering what's going to happen now. I feel like service companies are the one that prone to survive the most in this sort of economy that we're heading into. Would you agree with that? And if yes, tell me why, and if no, tell me why.
So let's start with what I think I'm qualified to comment on and what I'm just speculating on.
Okay.
So anything that is larger than a small to medium-sized enterprise, which would be anything larger than 100 employees, I'm not really qualified to comment on that because I haven't really worked on that type of stuff since my PwC days, which was 15 years ago, right? But for small enterprises, the ones that are really going to be hit are the ones that rely on bricks and mortar and face to face. So hair salons, barbershops, stores that sell retail goods that are not necessary retail goods, like not food. You know, nightclubs, bars, entertainment, event centers, things like that. I feel they're going to suffer. Okay? They are suffering right now financially because there's a couple of things going on. A, their costs are so high because of the physical costs. Okay. B,
mainly rent.
Rent is a huge thing, right? And there is a program now. I'm not familiar with all the details yet because the details
just came out yesterday.
Yeah, it just came out. But there's rent, but there's also physical things. You know, a nightclub requires constant repairs and maintenance, right? The nightclub require, you know, the DJ equipment, the speakers, so on and so forth. It requires a physical presence and physical maintenance. So, and it also requires people to physically be there.
Right.
So,
of course.
You know, so when I start at the top, I start with the unnecessary things, right? So nightclubs, they're toast. Bars.
Gosh, that's so painful to hear.
Yeah, they're toast, right? Restaurants, they're toast, man. They're toast, right? You know, but then when I start getting to things such as retail goods, they're probably toast too, because people are, you know, grandmas and grandpas are going to start learning how to use Amazon, man, right? So then I keep going down and I say, okay, well, what about barbershops?
Right.
You know, your barber's not going to come to your damn house. It's not going to be profitable. They're probably going to figure out a way, you know, masks, gloves, wipe down after every customer. Man, I cut my own hair. It's freaking horrible.
I was about to ask you, how do you maintain your hair so slick? Because look at me. I'm just
it's a disaster, right? My hair is like so long, but there's going to be a point where I'm going to be like, okay, I can't cut my own damn hair, right? So that's kind of what I would say. There's three things. There's complete wants. There's a blend between wants and needs, and then there's needs. And the needs-based physical things, food, so on and so forth. I have clients and a lot of connections in the produce industry, for example. They're adapting, man, and they're going to make money.
How are they adapting?
They're adapting in the sense that they're like, hey, look, we have to get food to people.
Right.
It has to be it's got to go direct to the people now.
There is a demand for food no matter what happens.
Exactly. No matter what, people are going to eat, and they have to eat, and they want fresh food. Okay. How do we get it to them safely and profitably? And they're adapting. So, you go to the food terminal at the Ontario Food Terminal, which is literally just down the street from where I am physically, here at Park Lawn and Lakeshore in Toronto. They're adapting, man. You see masks, gloves, curbside pickup, and they're making money. They're making money. So they're gonna start doing well. And then what I suspect is, if this is really the new world order, which it might not be, right? If they come out with a vaccine, I'm sure we're humans, we forget what happens and we go back to normal.
Right.
But let's say this is the new world order. Meal kits, for people that just can't cook fancy foods for themselves at home. Competition with meal delivery. Right. Shut down the big restaurant, but you're a good chef and you can figure out a way to get a good tasting hot meal to someone's home quickly and affordably. There's going to be some good competition. There will be adaptation there. There will be adaptation, right? So those types of things, I think they're going to adapt, but there will be failures. I think there will be failures in the small business realm. Big business, I can only tell you what I see on the news, right? Which you can figure it out for yourself. Everybody can figure it out for themselves. But I think what's going to happen is necessary service-based businesses, lawyers, accountants, things like that, we're going to adapt, and I think we're going to come out stronger, to be honest with you. I mean, even some of my clients who are physiotherapists, for example, they're doing assessments. They've figured out how to do many types of assessments and provide their services virtually. Right.
I'm assuming using some video, like webcam, sessions.
Yeah, I think there's like a telehealth thing available, and then webcams, and people are figuring it out. And if you're in pain, you might not be a tech savvy person, but if you're in pain, you need that service. You're going to figure it out. Like, people are resilient. People are not as stupid as they think they are. People are resilient, and they'll figure it out. And what we're realizing is, like, hey, like, this trade show, do we really need to get 100,000 people together to do a damn trade show? Or is this just an excuse to go to Vegas for a vacation, right?
Well, I think that was always the case. An excuse to go to Vegas.
Yeah.
Which I support full-heartedly.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
So let me ask you this, because that's what I'm wondering about. I know that, I don't know, but I can speculate that around 10% of the workforce is actually those waiters and, workers of the night scene, nightclubs and bars and all of that.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to them? I mean, we're talking about maybe college students or recent graduates, or as you were, like a high school graduate. What are they going to do? What's the, just speculate with me for a second. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it would be really interesting to speculate. Do you read? Do you like to read?
Sometimes. I'm more of a listener. I listen to audiobooks.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I speed them up to 2 times speed and I just blast through them.
Absolutely. What did you read? What have you read? What got into your mind?
What's coming to my mind is, I can never pronounce his name, Yuval Noah Harari, I think it is. And his books, Sapiens, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and Homo Deus. And he speculates, and the concept of a universal basic income. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Of course.
And he speculates that the ability and our ability to develop algorithms to complete tasks that humans are right now employed to complete will create something that he calls, and I hate to use the term, but a worthless class of people, right? And I might very well become a worthless class of person. Filling in tax returns and doing tax planning, it could probably be built into an algorithm. I would think. I'm not a scientist, right? But really, what is it that I'm doing? I'm looking at a situation and I'm saying, if this, then that. If this, then that. It's basically an algorithm, right? And eventually, maybe I'll be worthless. So what do we do with these people that are, in essence, unemployable? We got to give them money. They need to live. We can't let them die, right? That's not the policy of a Western nation like ours. And maybe we're kind of starting to see that already. And,
right. It's funny because I don't know if it happened in Canada, but in the United States, the paycheck protection, the payment, everyone just got to $100 in their bank account if they filed the tax return in the past 2 years. It's the thing where they didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to apply. They didn't have to fill out any form. They just woke up one morning and like, oh, look at that. I have $1,200 in my account. Kind of gave a lot of people an idea, as sort of like, oh, so it's possible. So the government has an infrastructure just to deposit cash into our bank accounts with no problem. And I'm already seeing, the conversation started about universal basic income, because ideally, like it does, people just got like a good, like a physical example of it. Like, this is possible. Although like my thing is, and that applies not only to like a stimulus package in America, but also in Canada. I see Canada also kind of have the same programs. Like they don't deposit it directly to you, but you have to apply a thing or something like that. But either way, it's money. So you can receive money from the government, and they're announcing more and more stimulus packages, more and more, budgets are passed to assist people in Canada. Where are they getting all their money from? I mean, what's in the long term? Like, how are we just going to end up paying more taxes, the people who are earning money and not getting that stimulus package? Are we paying for this, or are they paying for this? Like, how do you see this play out?
Well, then we can get into the philosophy of what the hell is money. It's an agreement between you and me that some zeros and ones floating around on a server, in a data center somewhere are worth, this mouse and a meal, right?
So they're saying they're going to print it out.
Just print the shit, right? Print the damn stuff. And you think about it. I mean, I'm not an economist, right? But
right, because inflation was the thing. This thing that I thought about right away.
Yeah, I thought about it too. But then I said, okay, but then, you print money, you dump it into the system. There's more money, and it causes inflation. But does it? And maybe like you can have an economist on as a guest, but there's also the agreement between individuals as to what amount I want to pay for something. So just because, and I'm speculating, just because, let's say me personally, if you handed me $1 million right now, $10 million, let's say something that'll really put a dent in my perception of reality. You handed me $10 million unencumbered, no tax, and said, Fab, here's $10 million. I'm not a fancy guy. Would I go to work tomorrow? Probably not tomorrow, but eventually I'd go back to work. I'd probably eventually go back to work. There's only so much you can, there's only so long I can party and
bored, especially with this virus thing.
Yeah, but the thing here is, you just gave me this magical $10 million.
Yeah.
Once I get used to having that $10 million, let's say, am I really going to want to pay, 50% more for a pack of gum? Probably not. I'm not going to let someone take advantage of me just because I have extra money. And collectively, if we all have more physical money out there, right? But we're all afraid of, coronavirus 2022 coming and getting into a situation like this again. Will our Western consumer society really come back full force, or will we be more of savers? And will we be tighter with our money and be better negotiators, looking for better value, right? So I'm not sure what's going to happen. I mean, if you look at it traditionally, like, you go to take Economics 101, you look, okay, we print money, lower interest rates, it's going to cause inflation because you'd want to get out of and then you increase interest rates and, tighten the money supply. And, you put water on the fiery economy. But maybe it's a whole new world order. I don't know. I could speculate. I could continue to speculate, but will there be a shit ton of inflation? I don't know. I don't know, but they need to get the money from somewhere.
Right. I just had this idea, or like a thought. What if how in Canada they have rent control, like you cannot really increase your rent for by 50% or something like that.
Yeah.
What if they do the same for consumer goods and just we're going to give you more money, but we're not going to allow you to increase the price to sort of suppress the inflation. But who knows? That kind of brings me to another topic that I wanted to discuss with you. When you started talking about, philosophy, what is money? Kind of like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about cryptocurrency. I read this morning that Bloomberg just issued some sort of a statement, or someone just dropped a phrase that, we're now officially saying that cryptocurrency is like, I think they said it's gold or something. And I'm paraphrasing because I saw it in one of them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, okay, so they're starting to take on official level, they're putting cryptocurrency on notice, and they've been for a while, but now like they're sort of, that the whole cryptocurrency thing is going back right now, and it's not really collapsing. It's at the 7,000 United States dollars right now. What is your perspective on cryptocurrency? Is this something that you as a private person would want to have in your portfolio, and if yes, then why?
So I have a bit of a tainted view of cryptocurrency. So let's start with the beginning, right? Cryptocurrency, my understanding, is based on blockchain technology, right? Which is something that computer scientist friends of mine have attempted to explain. You might as well be speaking in a combination of Chinese, Greek, and Martian. I don't know what the hell that is, okay? But at the end of the day, it's a currency, like any other currency. And it depends on the two people transacting, agreeing to a value. Okay. So whether people want to pay with cryptocurrency or currency of a sovereign nation, to me, it makes no difference. So I see cryptocurrency likely becoming a real thing. It's a matter of what can I buy with it, right? And when I can start buying the things that I need, right? Food or a house, as opposed to illicit drugs and weapons, like illegal weapons, when I can start buying the things that I need with it, then it's going to be something real. And then it's just going to be a currency like any other that people will speculate on, that people will use for hedging purposes, so on and so forth. And it's a matter of the governments of the world to get together to learn, how do we control and tax this? Because ultimately they have to be able to see what's going on, right? Because they need to know who to tax to get money into their pockets to build roads and to provide healthcare and so on and so forth.
Right. And I feel like one of the strengths of cryptocurrency, as far as what they sell on it, let's like be a Bitcoin, for example, it's really decentralized, so it's not being governed by any government, so they cannot really print more of it because there's no more than 22 million Bitcoins in the world, that are will be in the future will be mined or already mined. And so that kind of gives this protection against it's basically going back to the gold standards all over again. And I feel like that kind of gives the control. And again, I'm not an economist myself too, but I feel like that's like a good, huge selling point on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular. I'm just thinking, I don't know, you as someone who is in wealth management and estate protection, have you ever dealt with this cryptocurrency thing on like a scale where okay, this is something that I need to deal with seriously as part of my business? And actually, do you hold any cryptocurrency in your portfolio, if you don't mind me asking?
So I don't have any cryptocurrency. I'm very, 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 I'm basic, man. I've dealt with cryptocurrency on a number of occasions. I've advised people that were, mining. I think it was Ether, not Bitcoin, but they're mining Ether. But then it just didn't pan out because the electricity costs were too high. I don't know, something along those lines. And I've reported for tax purposes. And this was interesting because this was before there was even a position by the taxing authorities on what it was. I've had to like figure out how to calculate gains and losses on cryptocurrency.
Right. Me too. I've done that in the past. It's crazy. Yeah. But luckily, like, for example, I didn't have too much of that crypto cash, so I had to like figure it out basically on what's the capital gain on that. But I've seen
families go into financial ruin with crypto, right? I have one client that literally lost just under $1 million trading crypto, like on his own. And that's the thing. It's unprecedented. We don't know what it is. I hear people giving the same argument that you gave. There's a limited number of Bitcoins, but I'm sure we can buy and sell with fractional Bitcoins.
Right.
And there's nothing stopping somebody from creating a whatever coin if Bitcoins run out, right? So if we hit the maximum on Bitcoin, then somebody's going to create another crypto and so on and so forth over and over. And once again, let's look at the philosophy of money, right? Is it worth something to you? If something is worth something to you, right? If you like bananas, but your buddy hates bananas, and there's only one banana left in the world, you're probably going to pay $1,000 if you got that $1,000 lying around. But the other guy, you couldn't pay him to eat the damn thing, right? So is Bitcoin, like all these cryptocurrencies, they're here. I don't think they're going to go away. I think they're going to grow. I think there's going to be a use for them. Right. I don't know where it's going to go to. And it's pretty interesting because, I'm hoping that over the course of my career and the course of my life, I get to watch it pan out. But no, I don't advise on it. I have a big philosophy. If I don't understand something 100%, I will not advise on it. End of story. And if I cannot explain the investment to my client and have them understand it, I won't put it in my client's portfolio.
Makes sense.
So, I'm dealing with retail investors. And usually who are these people? Who has money? People in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, right? They're not, generally speaking, they're not sophisticated. Because if they were sophisticated, they wouldn't hire me. They would do it on their own, right? So I'm not dealing with hedge fund managers, so on and so forth. So I'm like, hey, look, buy a couple bank stocks, buy a couple utilities, round it out with some ETF, things that we can understand, right? Collect the dividend, reinvest, let it grow.
So let's talk about that, because I've seen you posted some stuff, or like you've been quoted on some things in Financial Post, I think, on ETFs. I'm a huge fan of ETFs. Well, not a huge fan, but I understand, why they are better than just, buying single stocks, for example, in some cases. So, but now we have this really weird economic situation where, I kind of see it's bouncing back a little bit, but people are still predicting that it's not over yet, and it might be all over for us again. How do you approach this subject with your clients when you're talking about wealth management right now? Obviously a lot of them, I would think they would be freaking out right now, whether they want to pull out, whether they want to, or other maybe actually very bullish on like, okay, let's get in. Let's get some piece of action while it's still on a low price. How do you see the market, and what kind of advice do you give to your clients right now?
Basically, what you said is exactly what happened. You have a handful of people panicking, a handful of people that forgot that they have an RRSP managed by me, and you have a handful of people calling up, hey, is it time to buy? Hey, is it time to buy? Right? And it's really about dealing with the psychology of it and dealing with people's personalities. If they're a panicky person, you advise them a little bit different than a person who's more of a gambler, right? But you go back to basic principles. This isn't rocket science. It's not a precise engineering feat, managing money, right? And anybody that tells you it is doesn't know what they're talking about, right? It's not about getting from A to B. That's how engineers work, right? How do we get from A to B? And it's very important to get from A to B without hiccups, right? Investments, in dealing with investments and getting back to the swing, we'll kind of come to the ETF thing.
Right.
My philosophy is this. Let's go back to basic principles. Well-diversified portfolio, live within your means, rebalance. It's been shown by people much more qualified and much more intelligent than myself that if you just stay the course, rebalance your portfolio, and you have a reasonable portfolio to begin with, you're going to be okay. Right?
What do you think about people holding gold in their portfolios as a hedge against downturns like this? Are you seeing that increasing? Are you a proponent of that?
I mean,
and I'm talking about like gold ETFs, for example, not necessarily like actually bullion.
Yeah. Holding gold bars, that's kind of crazy because you get robbed. But like a gold ETF, what the hell is gold? It's never going to pay you a dividend.
Right.
It fluctuates based on people's fears of the economy. If you want to hold gold. I don't fully understand it. It's never been a part of my personal strategy or things that I advise my clients on via ETFs. Many of my clients will have access to gold mining companies or indirect access to gold. But am I saying, hey, let's go buy a bunch of gold? That's directional. I'm not that type of an advisor, right?
Right. When it comes to the gold ETFs, the worst thing about it is freaking taxes, because I don't know, like when I was filling out my taxes and I had some experience with that, it's they have some adjustments, and I don't even know, like I have to always go back to like the research on how to fill out taxes for gold ETFs, but there's always some sort of a fee that you have to pay that you never have to pay with other ETFs, but gold is its own thing that you have to like deal with. And I can't say right now what it is, but it's like always like some sort of a thing that it's an extra headache to have when you're filing for taxes with gold. I don't know, just my personal experience.
Yeah, and remember those gold ETFs. I believe there's a one or two whatever that track
GLD in particular.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar exactly with all of them, but one or two of them actually have physical gold in a vault to back up their position. And I think there's one that I ran across that uses derivatives.
And I think that's what it is. I think that's like a storage fee or something like that to move gold or something like that to hold it. And that's what you have to. They kind of put it on you. They put it on you when you file the taxes.
Of course. Yeah, and there's also insurance. It has to be insured, I believe. So yeah, it can be a complicated thing. For sure.
Yeah. Fabio, what's your plans now? What are you like? Obviously, right now we're just all sitting and waiting what's going to happen next. But assuming everything's going to go back to semi, I don't want to say normal because I guess that's like a word that no one or like it's not cool to use normal anymore. But let's say we're going to go back to something that previously resembled what was happening previously. Like what are you planning to do with your company? Do you have any goals, benchmarks? Do you want to scale? Right now you're focusing on quality, but maybe in the future you want to maybe do some mergers and acquisitions? Because I was always wondering about accounting firms kind of aspiring to be one of those big fours by just strictly merging.
And so this is the thing with accounting firms, at least in Canada, okay? Growing, scaling an accounting firm, it's a very difficult task. It's very partner-based is what I found. People want to know and speak to the partner. So to scale it, you kind of move out of accounting and you're getting into that kind of H&R Block type of service. And I've found over the years, we tried to scale. We refused to acquire books of business. We said we're going to do it on our own. We don't want to pay for clients. And what I've found is what I like having a smaller, higher quality book of clientele that I know and understand and that listen to me and take my advice. So I'm personally, the way I'm saying, let's say I'm halfway down my career at this point. I see the remainder of my career, the first 25% of my career was learning. And that's when you notice when you look at my LinkedIn, I did 2 years here, 2 years there, 2 years.
Right.
I wanted to learn. I wanted exposure to, when I was at PwC, I worked in the tax department, the transaction department. I worked in so many different industries. I worked in valuations, same thing at Grant Thornton. I worked in a bunch of industries. Then I went to Harmonic. And so I wanted that breadth of knowledge so that I can find what it is that I wanted to do. Because I don't want to just work for money. I wanted to do something that makes me feel good about myself. And I think that I've figured it out around this point in my career. And now I'm going to streamline it, where there's 2 or 3 different things that I really like to do. And that's how I want to tail off now. So it's high quality clients, enough complexity in the work to keep my brain going, but without having to work, 16-hour days. Right. And I think that's the trajectory of my practice now, where I'd rather have I'd rather have like a tight, high quality team than 50 employees. Because if I wanted to do that, then I would have just busted my ass at PwC and became a partner there. And you know what I mean?
Classic.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I left for a reason because I didn't love it. Right. Nothing wrong with it. I have, friends that are partners at big 4 firms, and to each their own. Right. It's just not my thing.
Fabio, we've been talking for more than an hour now, and I just I so appreciate your time, and I just want to thank you sincerely for talking to me about these subjects. I know it's very serious right now, and people would like to know what's happening, and they would like to hear opinions of the experts, and I consider you that expert. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with me.
All right, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
How can people find you, or how can they find your company?
Sure. The best way to find me is just on my main website, which is cmllp.com.
Great. I'll put it in the lower third when I'm gonna post this podcast.
Awesome, man.
All right, Fabio. Thank you so much. Stay on the line. I'm gonna say goodbye to you personally as well. But for this podcast, I really appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.